What's happening? Andy here. I am joined today by my good friend Bob Goldberg. How are you today, Bob?
Hi, Andy. What's happening? Everything's great. I'm having a wonderful day. It's 76 degrees here in Chicago, and the sun is shining, and just as it's shining on our industry. Glad to see you.
Great to see you. I haven't seen you in a little bit, and for the probably couple people who might watch this video who don't know who you are, could you just give us a quick give us the pitch? Who's Bob Goldberg, and what do you do for our industry and for BTA and the other areas that you work in?
Thanks, Andy. I am so privileged to be General Counsel for the Business Technology Association, previously NAMDA. It's been over 40 some years. I have the greatest job in the world because any issue that arises in the industry, someone will call me and say, Bob, what do you think? What do we do? How do we address it? So I sit just in a beautiful position to have a good feeling for the industry. And I'm very pleased now to see how it's growing and recovering from COVID and strengthening, and dealers are improving their bottom lines and taking on new products and opportunities.
So I didn't know any of that. I really know you more for your Patriot Pack, Biker Bob, the Judge, as you're known in closer circles that I run in, I roll in. And Bob, you've joined us, and we've gone across the country several times now, and raised a lot of money for the Jillian Fund and for some other charities. We're going to be doing that again this year. You are the industry guru when it comes to issues, especially like the one I want to talk with you about today. So let's just dive right in. Non-competes. It's been a huge issue for our industry. It was I had one when I worked at Icon way back when. It's nothing new, but it's there's a lot to be said on both sides. So let's start. What do you think about non-competes? How do they apply to our industry, and where do you stand?
Well, we got thrown a huge curveball this year. The Biden administration wants to eliminate non-competes. They think it curtails an employee's ability to move among jobs and positions. And non-competes have been used in several instances where perhaps they are overreaching. If you work for a fast food enterprise and you want to go across the street from McDonald's to Burger King or somewhere like that, there are people that have non-competes that are making minimum wage, and they're being foreclosed from improving their position, improving their compensation. So the Biden administration, put out a directive that they want to see non-competes eliminated. So our friends at the Federal Trade Commission in Washington proposed a trade regulation rule that will eliminate non-competes. Now, the one exception is, and we'll talk about this, the non-competes in conjunction with the sale of a business, because those will be enforced because they need to protect the goodwill and the people, what the assets they're buying from a business. But the FTC rule does two things. It will eliminate non-competes for employees, and number two, it will void all existing non-competes. So that is really problematic for our industry. Our industry is different. Our industry, the acquisition cost for a customer is substantial. There's a lot of work that goes in to develop the customer, to determine their needs, to meet their needs, to fill their needs, and make the relationship successful. If one of those salespeople or one of those sales managers or a technician decides to go and start their own business in competition, that could be problematic, and they could take a lot of the assets and the secrets of their previous employer. So we at the Business Technology Association are making our position known that that installed base, that myths in the field that we have, is a valuable asset and must be protected. And we protect that through non-competes. Now, if they eliminate non-competes, there are other things we can do. And first of all, in terms of the FTC rule, it's still in the discussion stage. Comments are being filed, and they're being filed by a lot of different segments and channels that are saying that we should be different, this should be different. We go all the way from doctors to office equipment, that say that non-competes are important things. So there'll be hearings on the non-compete trade regulation rule, and those hearings will give additional information, and then there'll be revisions to the FTC rule. And finally, there'll be legal challenges to the FTC rule. Have they basically gone too far under their mandate to prohibit unfair methods of competition by proposing this trade regulation rule? So right now, we're under a current circumstances where non-competes are being enforced. There are certain states like California that do not allow them. There are states like Illinois and Massachusetts where let me tell you, Colorado, if you don't make more than $101,000, you can't be subject to a non-compete. In the District of Columbia, it's $150,000. You can't be subject to a non-compete. And here in Illinois, where I am, it's $75,000, and you must have been employed for 2 years. So, the states are doing restrictions as well. And in some respects, with states having various restrictions, you're better off having a federal law, which makes it uniform throughout the country. It's just that we feel the FTC rule goes too far. So when we look at, I know you want to ask questions.
Yeah, there's a ton in there. There's a ton in there.
I'm on a roll, but
yeah.
In terms of what the dealers can do, the first step a dealer should take is in their employee manual have a confidentiality provision that says that they will be exposed to certain confidential and proprietary information in the course of their work, and that should remain confidential and cannot be disclosed. So that's just a basic measure that you can put into your employee manual that will have an effect to preserve confidentiality. Now, we have non-competes. And now, when I started in the industry, non-competes looked like this. You can't work for 2 years in 50, 100-mile radius of the business. Now, a non-compete says that you can't do basically anything for a competitor. You can't use any information. You can't do anything to compete with the business. Now, some courts have looked at those and said, time out. What if Andy wants to, go from Icon to Canon, and he wants to be a janitor? This says he can't be a janitor. So there's now the janitor rule that it has to basically, courts have said, have a bearing on what the position was previously and be a threat. So you have these personal non-competes, which used to be geographic in time. Now they've been limited. Mostly I put it in the area that the dealership works. And I always say 1 year, will be upheld. 2 years sometimes is pressing it. So there are also non-competes with the sale of a business. And we talked about that earlier. Sale of a business, those non-competes will be enforced, because if you get paid $15 million for your business and the next day you go out and start it again, that's not fair, and that's recognized. There also are non-solicitation agreements, and this is where I think we should be looking at more carefully in terms of the business technology industry. Non-solicitation says you can go work for a competitor, but you can't solicit any of the customers that you were responsible for or had knowledge of while you were employed by us. And that's a more reasonable approach. It doesn't say you can't compete, can't take the job. It just, you can't take our customers. Now, in those situations, we put language in that says you can't do it directly or indirectly. So you and I are friends. So I worked at ABC company. I say, Andy, I got this lease termination list that I stole from my last employer. ABC is going to expire in 3 months. Get in there and see what you can do. This is what they're paying. That's illegal. That's improper, and that's inappropriate as well. There are also non-disclosure rules. So the non-disclosure goes a step further than the confidentiality in the employee manual and says that you can't disclose any information you obtained while you were employed to a third party that's competitive or in detriment to your previous employer. So you have that non-disclosure provision that you can put in as well. I often suggest you have a non-solicitation, non-disclosure merged together. If you're a BTA member, you can go to the bta.org website, and there you can find templates that have these things, and you can craft it and put it in place. Now, let's say you have absolutely nothing in place. Then there are trade secret laws that exist in every state in the United States. And that says there are certain things that are trade secrets that are maintained as confidential, and you can't take those and use them against your employer. They're trade secrets, and they belong to the employer and the employer only. There are standards. You have to show that it is, in effect, a trade secret. It was kept confidential. It wasn't disclosed. And I always say, your CRM system, whatever else you're using, you must make sure that it's not open access to everyone. I know in our law firm, we used to have near the copiers so we could, put in the codes, a list of all the clients. Well, that was inappropriate because anyone can walk in, look at that list, and it wasn't maintained as confidential. So, you have to take certain steps. Right now, I suggest to dealers, don't do anything drastic to change what you're currently doing. When the FTC rule comes out, at that point, we can visit again and say, here's the best solution. But dealers need to look at non-competes, need to protect their employees from leaving and taking confidential information. You can put it on a thumb drive, you put it on a phone, you can do whatever you want. And it's important because that's the asset. When we sell a business, that's what we're selling, and that's what you need to protect.
So much in that. Back to the beginning, one of the first things that you said, the Burger King to McDonald's, our industry is not like Burger King to McDonald's. We're dealing with, a salesperson who, let's face it, when a customer buys, they don't buy from the company, they buy from that rep, and you're vulnerable when that rep jumps ship and moves somewhere else, right? And so, I understand that the non-solicitation, although, the first thing I could think of was exactly where you went, which was, hey, go call on this account, cut me in if you get it, right? I expect a little finder's fee. And I don't know how you document that, because the reps in theory are supposed to be out there every day banging on doors, right? Making their calls. And in theory, there's no reason to say that they couldn't have, backed into that. You had a good rep who's in this territory, and lo and behold, they keep showing up in your account. How can you prove that?
Well, and that question comes up often. I had one of those recently where we lost one of our IT people, and lo and behold, 3 weeks later, the biggest account is asking us questions, and we think we're going to lose him, and he's in there. Okay. Now we can keep him out of there. And we wrote a letter, a cease and desist, to the new dealership saying, you cannot, he's subject to this, cannot do this, cannot do that, etc. They came back with their CRM system and said, look, we've been in that account for 18 months trying to win them over. And it was well documented. There were phone calls, there were visits, there was a lunch, there was a golf round, things they had done to court this customer. So yes, you're right. Directly or indirectly can work. It can be violated, but if they go in with the person that just left, that's going to be a problem. Right. But if you show a clear record of communication and attempts to secure the customer by another rep, that can get you out of any difficulty in terms of this situation.
So flip it, right? My background was sales. I have friends, actually, I started this career and they're still in sales, and every now and then, they get a little frustrated and they start looking around and they can't go anywhere. They're locked in. They're at the point where they're in their 50s. They've been doing this their whole career, and they're working with one company. They've got a pretty good it's not even that it's a good non-compete. No one knows if it's a good non-compete until it goes to court, right? The problem is it scares off any potential company that might hire him that's within our industry. And at this point, that guy knows toner. That's all he knows is print, print, print. And where is he going? So if he was unhappy, the fact that he's got that non-compete means that nobody's going to talk to him. So he's kind of locked in. He really can't go anywhere if he wanted to. He's happy at the moment, but down the road, And in previous instances, he wasn't happy, and gets right to the end, gets to these interviews, and that other company says, "I don't want to, I don't want to go to bat. I don't want to fight your legal fees." And let's face it, some of these companies have much deeper pockets than that typical rep. What do you say to that rep? What do you say to this person, this man, this woman, this salesperson that, I've been selling for 20 years. I don't know anything else but selling copiers and manage print. This company isn't who hired me. They've changed. They've been sold, perhaps, like you mentioned. The management's left that's taken care of me all these years. I don't like it here anymore. Got a new sales manager. I don't see any of these reasons, right? Now what? Now what am I supposed to do? I have to sit for 2 years.
Well, I'm going to look at the restriction and see what it says, whether or not it's reasonable or unreasonable, whether or not it's enforceable or unenforceable. And you're right. The cost for an employee to defend that suit is overwhelming. These suits run $50,000, $100,000, and the employee certainly can't do that. My advice to the individual would be pick up your family, move to Florida, go to the sunshine, go to Arizona, go to wherever you want to go, but go outside that territory. You know how to sell. You know how to sell XYZ manufacturer. Find a dealer who represents that line. Go into that area and start building your book.
Very good advice, sage advice. We're heading towards the end, but before we get there, I do want to spend a little bit more time talking about this, potential ruling, which, if I understood you correctly, overnight, all of these non-competes could just be gone, right? Invalidated. They all go away instantly. So every one of you dealers watching this, who's protected right now, who's, safe right now, what happens if that happens? What's our landscape? Where does our industry? I mean, is it just the Wild West? People are going to be all over, going wherever, or?
Hopefully not. Hopefully dealers have confidentiality provisions in place. They have it in their handbook. They have it in an agreement. Non-solicitation is still up in the air. It's mentioned once in the rule, but we will see where that develops and how it comes out. There are ways to protect, and we will make sure that dealers have the information to protect that valuable customer information. I also suggest to dealers, and I know it's an administrative nightmare, but in terms of cell phones, make them company cell phones, because you and I know that every technician, every salesperson has told that customer, listen, you have a problem, here's my cell, call me and I'll get it taken care of immediately. So you want to control that phone number, and you want to control their computer or tablet, whatever else they have, that it's company property. So when they leave, you get the cell phone back and the number, you get the computer or the iPad back and all the information on it. Take steps to protect yourself. If it becomes the wild, wild west, the rich will get richer because they'll have the wherewithal to hire people away for a few extra dollars. Especially with technicians. Would you rather take someone right out of a trade school and train them and spend 2-3 years to get them up to speed, or hire someone that's already been to the manufacturer's training and's done it for a few years? You certainly would be willing to pay a $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 more to get that trained person over. So we got to take steps, and we got to protect it and make sure that we see the value in our business and that it doesn't go out the door with an employee.
This has been awesome, Bob. I really appreciate you taking the time to go over this. I think the things you just reviewed are invaluable to the people in this industry, as are most of the things that you tend to do for these guys. You're not all just golf, thank goodness. Your day job is actually pretty amazing, the stuff that you get into on a daily, weekly basis. So upcoming shows, anything coming up that you're going to be speaking at, any BTA shows you're going to be attending? Where's Bob going to be in the next couple months?
I'm going to be speaking at BTA in Denver, and there I'm taking my wonderful position, and the topic is I Heard It Through the Grapevine. And we're going to be sitting there and talking about things that are happening currently, sharing them with dealers, and make sure other dealers don't experience the same challenges. So I'm looking forward to that Denver meeting. It's in June, and the national meeting for BTAs in Boston at the end of August this year. There'll be another great meeting. We've listened to the dealers. We have panels. We're looking at new opportunities that dealers can get into. A lot of people are jumping into telephones and telephone services. Boy, and that's a real interest. I'm right now reviewing an electric charging contract for a dealer. This is a rather substantial dealer. I guess ACDI, Josh and Mark Hart went out and talked to him. And I've got a 14-page agreement I'm working on today, and I'll finish today looking at electric charging. There are tremendous opportunities there under recent tax legislation that basically pay you to put these in, because the administration in this instance wants, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of charging stations all over the country so we can get off fossil fuels. So you asked me a simple question. I'll be in Denver, I'll be in Boston, but I get excited because there's so many opportunities. Come listen to them, share with us. And Andy, thanks for what's happening. You are what's happening in the industry. Thank you.
Great seeing you, Bob. We will talk soon. And thanks so much for being on the show. Take care.
Thank you too. Thank you.